Have you ever reached a point where someone pushed you so far, so deliberately, that you stopped trying to be polite, stopped trying to be reasonable, and finally decided enough is enough? That's exactly how my story begins, with a single gate, a stubborn HOA Karen, and a line in the sand she should have never crossed. Because what she didn't know was that every time she disrespected that line, she wasn't just breaking a rule, she was breaking my trust, my patience, and the peace I worked so hard to build out on my ranch. And eventually, I set a trap she never saw coming. I bought my ranch for one reason: peace. Nothing fancy, nothing wild, just open fields, a long dirt driveway, and a sturdy metal gate that separated my private property from the rest of the HOA community. That gate was my boundary, my protection, and honestly, my pride. I kept it clean, maintained, and locked exactly the way it should be. Life was quiet until Karen appeared. Now, Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the type who believed rules were for everyone else. She drove a shiny white crossover SUV, the kind covered in those live, laugh, love stickers, but driven like a tank. She wasn't even supposed to use my ranch road. We had a dedicated HOA road for residents, but according to her, that road was too bumpy, too long, and too inconvenient. So what did she do? She made my private ranch gate her personal shortcut, over and over again. The first time I caught her, I thought maybe it was an honest mistake. Maybe she got turned around. We all make mistakes, right? I walked out calmly, waved her down, and said, "Ma'am, this is private property. Please use the HOA road." But Karen did what Karens do. She smiled, the kind of smile that wasn't a smile at all, and replied, "Yeah, well, the gate wasn't locked, so I figured it was okay. You should really fix that if you don't want people using it." She said that and then drove off. That should have been my sign, but I'm a reasonable man. I believed too much in courtesy, so I locked the gate, double-checked the chain, and thought that would solve the problem. It didn't. 3 days later, I heard my dogs barking like crazy. I stepped outside, and there she was again. This time, she didn't accidentally drive through. No, she got out of her SUV and was literally unhooking my chain lock. She looked up at me like I was the one trespassing. "What do you think you're doing?" I asked. She rolled her eyes, actually rolled them, and said, "I'm running late for a board meeting. Your gate is obstructing community access." Community access? My ranch road wasn't HOA property. The board had no claim to it whatsoever. But Karen didn't care. To her, convenience was law. I told her firmly, "If you break that lock, we're going to have a serious problem." She responded with, "You can't stop residents from accessing shared land." Shared land. My land. She snapped my lock in half like it was nothing, tossed it to the side, and drove through. My jaw literally dropped, not out of shock, out of pure disbelief. And that anger, that tight feeling in your chest when someone violates your boundaries with zero guilt, yeah, that's when it started. I replaced the lock, bought a thicker one, welded an extra latch, the whole works. And guess what? 2 days later, broken again. I checked my trail camera footage, and there she was, Karen, the gate destroyer, snapping locks like she was starring in an action movie. She even looked straight into the camera at one point. No shame, no fear. That's when the HOA president called me. And instead of scolding her, instead of apologizing, he said, "Karen has complained that your gate is obstructing her route. Please keep it open during daytime hours." I laughed. I actually laughed in his face. "Sir, that is private property. You have no authority to order that." But he wasn't joking. "We'll discuss it further at the next HOA meeting," he said. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just Karen. This was an entire board enabling her behavior. And if I didn't put my foot down now, they'd walk all over me forever. So I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I simply said, "Fine, we'll discuss it." But inside, something else was brewing. That was the moment the line broke. The moment I realized kindness wasn't going to stop Karen, logic wasn't going to stop the HOA, and waiting wasn't going to fix anything. If they wanted a discussion, I'd give them one. If they wanted access, I'd make them regret it. And if Karen wanted to keep driving through my gate, well, I decided I'd set a trap she never saw coming. The night after the HOA president tried to tell me to keep my gate open, I sat on my porch staring at the dark outline of that metal frame at the end of my driveway. That gate had been my boundary, my peacekeeper, and now it had become the battleground between me and the most entitled neighbor I had ever met. I replayed everything in my head. The snapped locks, the disrespect, the HOA siding with her, and all I felt was this slow burn building in my chest. You know the kind that tells you, this ends now. But before I did anything drastic, I wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy. So the next morning, I walked down to the gate and inspected it again. The hinge was bent. The post had tire marks where she must have scraped it while speeding through here. The ground was torn up from her constant shortcuts. And there, lying in the dirt, was my latest lock, snapped clean through the middle like it was made of plastic. She didn't even bother to toss it out of sight. She left it as a message, a taunt. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands, shaking my head. That's when my neighbor, Carl, walked up. He lived 2 houses down. Quiet guy, mind his own business. He rubbed his chin and said, "Karen strike again?" "Yeah," I sighed. "That's the 3rd lock this week." He let out a long whistle. "Heard she nearly hit your dog yesterday while flying through here." That hit harder than I expected. My dogs were like family. If she ever hurt them... Carl leaned closer and lowered his voice. "She's been bragging about it too. Says the HOA won't do anything to her because she's on the social committee." Ah, that explained the arrogance. That explained the entitlement. Being part of the HOA social committee must have given her this imaginary crown she thought she could swing around like a weapon. "Well," I said, tossing the broken lock into a bucket, "I'm heading to the meeting tonight. Let's see what their big plan is." But even as I said that, I knew the meeting wasn't going to solve anything. HOAs don't solve problems, they create new ones. And sure enough, I was right. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, which already felt strange to me since my ranch technically wasn't HOA property, it just bordered their land. But I attended anyway, because if they were going to talk about my gate, then I was going to sit front and center. As soon as I walked in, Karen shot me a glance from across the room. That smug look, like she had already won, like the board had already decided that my property was suddenly hers to drive through. She sat there, tapping her nails against her phone, not even acknowledging me. The president, a man who seemed permanently overwhelmed, cleared his throat and said, "Next item on the agenda, access concerns regarding the East Ranch Gate." That was me. He barely finished the sentence when Karen loudly added, "Yes, thank you, I'd like to speak first." Of course she would. She stood up, smoothed her shirt, and said with that shrill confidence, "For months, access has been blocked by an improperly managed gate that prevents residents, especially those of us with responsibilities, from using the safer route." Safer? My ranch road was not a community shortcut. It was never meant for any HOA resident. But she kept going. "I, along with several others, feel this gate should remain unlocked during daytime hours or be removed entirely." Removed entirely? My jaw clenched. I felt every pair of eyes in the room shift to me, waiting for me to explode, waiting for me to argue. But I didn't. Not yet. The president nodded like a puppet. "We agree it may be best to allow daytime access." "No," I cut in. Calm, steady, firm. "That gate is on private land. You have no jurisdiction over it." Karen scoffed. "You share a road with us." "I don't share anything. The road is mine, my property, my maintenance, my insurance. You have your own HOA road." She crossed her arms. "That road is awful. It damages my suspension." I almost laughed. Almost. But instead I said, "That's not my problem." The room fell silent. She didn't like that answer. She stepped closer, eyes blazing. "Do you know how inconvenient you're making this? Do you know how disrespectful?" "Disrespectful?" I snapped back. "You've broken 3 locks. You've trespassed repeatedly. You've put my dogs in danger. And you're calling me disrespectful." A few people murmured. Even the HOA president looked uncomfortable.
Karen's voice went up an octave. "I'm a member of this community. I have rights." "This isn't community land," I reminded her. "It's my ranch." The board exchanged awkward glances. Finally, the president said, "Let's table this issue. We don't want conflict." Too late for that. As I left the meeting, Karen called out behind me, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Lock it all you want, cowboy. I'll get through it." That was it. The final spark, the last straw. She had declared war, and I wasn't going to fight it with more locks. No, something bigger formed in my mind. A plan, a trap, something completely legal, completely justified, and guaranteed to make her regret every shortcut she ever took. And as I walked back towards my ranch in the cool night air, I felt something shift in me. No more warnings, no more second chances, no more being polite. Tomorrow, the trap would begin.
I didn't sleep much after that HOA meeting. Not because I was worried, but because I was planning. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her snapping another lock, driving across my land like she owned it, looking at me with that smug face that said, "What are you going to do about it?" Well, I finally knew exactly what I was going to do about it. Before the sun even came up, I brewed a cup of coffee, grabbed my jacket, and headed down the long driveway toward the infamous gate. The morning fog hung low over the fields, giving the whole place an eerie calm, but beneath that calm was the storm building inside me. When I reached the gate, I didn't even bother touching the broken latch. Instead, I walked around the posts, checking the ground, studying the tracks. Karen's tire marks were everywhere, deep grooves cutting through the dirt like scars. She'd created an entire second path next to the gate from how often she forced her way around it. The disrespect was unbelievable. I pulled out my phone and started recording. If I was going to do this, I needed everything documented, every violation, every trespass, every single moment of her entitlement. Because the trap I had in mind wasn't just physical, it was legal, ironclad, the kind that would leave her no excuses, no wiggle room, and no way to spin the story in her favor like she always did. My plan began with a simple idea. If she insisted on driving through my private property, I'd make sure she never wanted to again. I spent most of the morning at the county office, talking to a property lawyer I'd worked with before. He raised an eyebrow when I told him what was happening. "She broke your locks?" I said. "3 of them." "And she's planning to keep going?" he asked. Tapped his pen against his desk. "Then she's trespassing, criminally. And if she damaged the gate, that's vandalism. Did you record any of this?" "I've got camera footage." "Good," he said. "Then you're fully within your rights to restrict access in any way you see fit. But if you're thinking of getting creative, make sure whatever you do is legal and safe." I smiled. "Don't worry, my trap won't hurt anyone, just their pride." He chuckled. "Then go for it." By the time I left his office, the trap was fully formed in my head. Clear, clean, perfectly designed. But before I could set it up, I made one more stop, the hardware store. I filled an entire cart with materials, concrete mix, posts, reflective warning signs, motion-activated alarms, and something Karen was truly going to hate, reinforced ranch fencing. Not the cheap stuff, the industrial kind used to contain 1,200-pound bulls. I drove home with the bed of my truck rattling under the weight of what was about to become the most satisfying project of my life. When I pulled up to the gate again, I got exactly what I expected, but hoped wouldn't happen this fast. Karen's SUV was parked halfway through my road. She was outside, hands on her hips, staring at my camera trail like it personally offended her. My stomach sank with frustration. "What are you doing now?" I asked, stepping out of my truck. She turned sharply. "Your camera flashed at me." "It's a camera. That's what cameras do." She marched up to me, wagging her finger like she was scolding a teenager. "You better delete any footage you have of me. You do not have my permission to record me." I laughed. "I'm on your property. I can record whatever I want." She huffed loudly. "You know what? I'm filing a harassment claim with the HOA. "You do that," I said, brushing past her. "And while you're at it, stop trespassing." She followed me, still ranting. "This is obstruction. We need this shortcut. You can't just block it because you're petty." "You have your own road," I reminded her again, grabbing a bag of concrete from the truck. "That road is inconvenient. This is the route that makes sense." "Not my problem," I said. She stepped closer, invading my space like she was trying to intimidate me.
I'm warning you, cowboy. Keep making this hard for me and you're going to regret it. I turned slowly and looked her dead in the eyes, voice calm but cold. No, Karen, you've been making it hard for me, and now I'm done being polite. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Good. For once, she had nothing to say. She stomped back to her SUV, muttering under her breath, then sped off, kicking dirt and gravel all over my boots. Typical. But I didn't let her get under my skin. Not anymore. As soon as she disappeared around the corner, the real work began. I started digging the post holes first, deep ones, reinforced with concrete. These weren't for a simple gate. No, these were the foundation for a fortress-style barrier that would prevent any vehicle from slipping through, a barrier only I could open. Then I installed a secondary fence line on both sides of the gate, stretching 15 feet each way. No more driving around it, no more shortcuts, no more trespassing. And the best part, right in front of the gate, hidden from plain sight, I installed a motion-activated alarm tied directly to my phone. The second she tried approaching, even on foot, I'd know. By sunset, everything was set. The trap wasn't flashy or dangerous. It was smarter, more annoying, more airtight than anything she'd ever dealt with. And the next time she tried breaking through, she wouldn't just be trespassing. She'd be caught, red-handed, on camera, with law enforcement already on the way. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and admired my work. The gate stood tall, stronger than ever, surrounded by a barrier not even Karen could bust through. Tomorrow, she'd try again. I knew she would. But tomorrow, she'd learn her shortcut days were officially over.
The next morning, I woke up before the sun, the way ranchers usually do. But this time, it wasn't the livestock or the dogs that stirred me awake. It was anticipation. A strange, heavy quiet hung in the air, the kind that tells you something big is about to happen. I made my coffee, walked outside, and stood on the porch overlooking the driveway. My reinforced gate glinted in the golden morning light like a challenge waiting to be answered. And I knew Karen wouldn't be able to resist that challenge. By 7:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. Not a text, not a call, but the alert I'd been waiting for. Motion detected, Eastgate. I felt the thrill rush through me. I tapped the notification and the live feed popped up. And there she was, Karen, dressed in her workout outfit like she was heading to Pilates, hair pulled into a tight ponytail, sunglasses on, marching toward the gate like she was the sheriff of the whole state. She stopped in front of the new fencing, squinted, and placed her hands on her hips. I watched her expression shift from confusion to disbelief to rage. She grabbed the fence, shook it, tried pulling it. Nothing. Industrial ranch fencing doesn't budge. She threw her hands up and yelled something I couldn't hear through the feed, but judging from her face, it wasn't friendly. I finished my coffee slowly, savoring the moment. By the time I walked down there, she was pacing like a bull about to charge. The moment she saw me, she stormed toward me. "What did you do?" she demanded, pointing at the barrier. "You can't block me in like this. You can't block community access." I kept walking calmly, boots crunching against gravel. "This is private property, Karen. I told you that." "This is illegal," she screamed. "No, it's actually very legal. I checked." She scoffed. "Who checks something like this? Normal people don't waste time checking." "Normal people," I said, stepping past her, "don't trespass on their neighbor's land." She clenched her fists. "You're being childish." I looked at her fence-grip red fingers. "You broke 3 locks," I reminded her. "If anyone's childish, it's not me." Her voice rose, high, shrill, unstoppable. "I'm reporting you to the HOA and the county and whoever else I need to. You cannot block this road." I stared at her, calm as ever. "This road belongs to me. You know that." She jabbed a finger toward the gate. "Move it!" "No." The silence after that was beautiful. For once, she didn't know what to say. But then something changed in her. Her eyes narrowed, lips pressed tightly together, and she whispered, "Fine, have it your way, but don't blame me for what happens next." She turned sharply and stomped off, her SUV roaring to life as she sped away. Most people would be worried after a threat like that. But me? I smiled. because I knew exactly what she was going to do next: run to the HOA. By noon, I had another alert. This time, a group. I walked down the driveway again and found not just Karen, but 3 board members standing around the gate like they were inspecting a crime scene. The HOA president cleared his throat as if preparing for a speech. "We've received multiple complaints about this barrier." "I'm sure you have," I said. He gestured with both hands, trying to look diplomatic. "It's obstructing residents." "No, it's obstructing Karen," I corrected. "No one else uses this road." Karen folded her arms dramatically. "That's beside the point." A board member, Linda, the only reasonable one in the entire HOA, spoke up quietly. "This is his property, you know." But the president ignored her. "We're requesting that you remove the fencing and unlock the gate." I almost laughed. Request denied. Karen exploded. "See, I told you he'd refuse. You need to cite him." "Cite me for what?" I asked. For, she stuttered, then blurted, "obstruction of community pathways." "This is not a community pathway," I said, enunciating every word. The president held up a clipboard. "We have a map." "Let me see it." He handed it over reluctantly. I scanned it, and there it was. My property line, clear, bold, undeniable. The road wasn't HOA owned, not even close. In fact, the HOA boundary ended 15 feet short of my fencing. I turned the clipboard around and tapped the map. "See this? That's my land. That's my road. That gate is on my property, legally, completely, without question." Linda nodded. "He's right." The president's face tightened. "Well, even so, your setup is—" Karen interrupted, screaming. "This is ridiculous. I need the shortcut. I'm not driving the long way around every day. I won't." I met her eyes. Steady, calm. "Then don't. Stay home." She gasped like I'd slapped her. The president exhaled heavily. "We'll take this under further review." That was HOA code for, "We can't force you to do anything, so we'll pretend we're thinking about it." They left. Karen didn't. She stayed, glaring at me like she was trying to burn a hole through my soul. Then she took a step closer and hissed, "You haven't won." I smiled. I already did. She stormed off without another word. As her SUV disappeared, my phone chimed again. Motion detected, Eastgate. I checked the feed. A sheriff's cruiser. My smile widened, because this was the part Karen never saw coming. The sight of that sheriff's cruiser on my live feed was the kind of satisfaction you can't buy. I had been waiting for this moment, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted the truth to finally land right where it needed to. Karen had crossed the line over and over, and now she was about to learn that the world outside her HOA bubble had consequences. I made my way down to the date, keeping my pace slow and steady. No need to rush. This moment had been building for weeks. When I arrived, the sheriff was already stepping out of his vehicle, adjusting his hat as he took a long look at the reinforced gate, the fresh concrete, and the new fencing. Karen was standing a few feet away from him, arms flailing wildly, voice raised so high it echoed across the open field. Yes, this is what I'm talking about," she yelled. "He's blocking access. He trapped the road. He's harassing me." The sheriff held up a hand. "Ma'am, I need you to calm down." She didn't. Of course she didn't. "He's been recording me without my permission. He's preventing community use of this road, and he's been intimidating me." The sheriff turned to me with a mildly exhausted look. "Sir, is this your property?" "Yes," I said, handing him the documents I had prepared ahead of time. The plat map, the deed, the property line survey, everything stamped and official. He reviewed them carefully, slowly, thoroughly. Karen hovered behind him like an angry wasp. "You don't have to look at all that. I already told you what's going on." The sheriff lowered the papers and said, "Ma'am, please give me a minute." She threw her hands up. "Unbelievable." After a moment, he nodded at me. "Everything checks out. This is your land." I nodded. "Correct." The sheriff looked at the fence again. "And you installed all this yourself?" "I did, and every bit of it is legal. I checked with a property lawyer." Karen gasped dramatically. See, he's going to extreme lengths just to keep me from using the shortcut. The sheriff slowly turned to her. Ma'am, it's not a shortcut, it's his private driveway. No, she shouted, it's a community access route. The sheriff opened the map again and pointed directly to the boundary line. The HOA boundary ends here. Everything beyond this point is his private property. Karen stared at the map like it was written in another language. Her face turned red, then purple, then a shade I didn't even know humans could achieve. I don't accept that, she stammered. The sheriff sighed. Ma'am, this isn't about what you accept, it's about the law. Her jaw dropped. You're taking his side? He said again, firmer this time. I'm following the law. She threw her hands on her hips and pointed at me like I had personally ruined her life. He's been targeting me. Actually, I've been trying to keep you off my land. Big difference. The sheriff turned to me. You mentioned on the phone you had footage. I do, I said. Would you like to see it? Karen snapped, no, but the sheriff said, yes, show me. I pulled up the videos on my phone. The broken locks, the trespassing, the SUV forcing its way around the gate, the moment she snapped my latch right in front of the camera, and even the clip from yesterday where she screamed she'd get through it no matter what. The sheriff watched quietly. His expression didn't change, but his posture did, more stern, more resolved. When the last clip ended, he took a breath and said, Ma'am, I'm citing you for trespassing and property damage. Karen's mouth fell open so far I thought her jaw might hit the gravel. What? It's all on video, he said respectfully. Repeated offenses. This is not a misunderstanding. No, you can't do this. I'm on the HOA social committee. The sheriff gave her a look. That doesn't mean anything here. She stuttered, lost for words, spinning in circles like the world suddenly didn't make sense to her. This is harassment. This is a setup. The sheriff continued writing. You'll also be responsible for the cost of the locks and gate repairs. She screamed again. This is insane. No, ma'am, this is the law. She snapped her gaze to me, glaring with pure hatred. You're going to regret this. I smiled. No, Karen, I'm finally done regretting not doing it sooner. The sheriff handed her the citation. She snatched it from his hand, stomped back to her SUV, and peeled out so fast she nearly spun into a ditch. The sheriff watched her go, shaking his head. Some people just don't like boundaries. They do when they're the ones making them. He chuckled. Well, you handled this the right way. Not everyone would have kept their cool. I shrugged. I'm not sure I kept all of it. Good job either way, he said, tipping his hat before heading back to his cruiser. And just like that, the war was over. Word spread fast. Karen avoided me. The HOA backed off. A few neighbors even thanked me for standing up to her. And that gate, that beautiful reinforced gate, it still stands, stronger than ever. The shortcut days were done. My peace was restored. And Karen finally learned the lesson she'd been avoiding her whole life. You can push people. You can provoke them. You can trespass on everything they own. But eventually, sooner or later, you'll step on the wrong rancher's land. And that's when you learn some boundaries don't bend, some people don't break, and some gates you just don't go through.